What would you do if a donor offered your struggling nonprofit enough money to stay open for the next 3 years so that you can serve hundreds of people, but then you found out their business was under investigation for overseas child labor? This is just one example of the hundreds of ethical dilemmas that nonprofit leaders and boards might face every year. Because being on a board isn't just about reviewing budgets and attending galas. A strong board and leadership team has to navigate the messy, gray area, ethical dilemmas that come up in the real world. And there's not always a clear right answer, but every choice does have a consequence. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 5 real-life nonprofit board dilemmas. And for each one, I'll break down the scenario, share some tips on how to navigate it, and give you the questions you and your board need to ask to handle it the right way. And I'm curious what you think, so keep the comments coming too. Before we dive into these impossible scenarios, if you are struggling to figure out exactly what your board should be handling versus what your staff should be leading, comment the word roles below, and I will send you the link to access my free board versus staff roles checklist. Let's jump into the deep end with this first doozy. All right, here's the scenario. Your small community arts museum is struggling. Donations are down, and you're facing the very real possibility of cutting programs and laying off staff. Suddenly, a donor offers a gift large enough to solve your financial problems for the next 3 years. But a quick search reveals the donor's family business is under investigation for using child labor overseas. The investigation is ongoing and no verdict has been reached. So I'm curious, if this were your organization, what would you do? Would you accept the money that will allow you to continue serving your community? Or would you refuse it to avoid any association with potential unethical practices? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm really curious. And this was the real life case study by the Marcella Center for Applied Ethics at Santa Clara University. So this is one of the things that they've talked about happening. Many experts say that there's not necessarily a single right answer here. However, board governance experts agree there is one thing you can do, and it's that boards need a clear gift acceptance policy in place before a dilemma like this arises, because it's not a matter of if, but when your organization could be faced with a controversial gift. When facing a dilemma like this, let's talk through a couple of questions that you and your board could think about to navigate it. First is, how do we weigh mission and financial stability against reputational integrity for the organization? Another one is, what if the donor is cleared of all charges? What if they're found guilty? Does our decision change depending on the outcome? Another would be, how would accepting this donation affect our other relationships? How we're viewed by other donors, our staff, the community we serve? If we accept this donation, where exactly do we draw the line in the future? All right, here is our second scenario. You are a board member of an organization that was founded, say, 10 years ago by a passionate, charismatic leader who is deeply respected in the community. However, in recent years, the organization has somewhat stagnated. The founder resists new ideas, micromanages the team, and has handpicked a board that is loyal to them personally rather than the organization's mission. Staff morale is just in the basement, and your most talented people are leaving. So if this was your organization, how would you think through what to do here about this dilemma? How does the board honor the founder's legacy and contributions while fulfilling its fiduciary duty to ensure the organization's long-term health? At what point does loyalty to the founder become a liability to the bigger mission? Now, this real-life scenario is based on a case study published by Blue Avocado, but honestly, it's a situation that I have heard about many times, even from some of you and from some of the organizations that I coach. This phenomenon is called, if you haven't heard of this before, founder's syndrome. It's one of the most common and difficult challenges in the nonprofit sector. It's when an organization's founder maintains disproportionate control as the organization grows, refusing to delegate or consider others' ideas, and becomes a bottleneck or barrier to growth. It's a major reason experts advocate for having an independent, which means not personally related to the founder, board of directors with formal governance processes. And if this scenario feels relevant to you, here are some questions that you and your board could reflect on. How do we navigate our personal loyalty to the founder versus our legal loyalty to the mission? How can the board provide effective oversight without overstepping its role and micromanaging the executive? What is the board's role in planning for the founder's eventual departure? And how can we do it respectfully while protecting the organization? But sometimes it's the board itself that's causing the problem. So let's talk through this third scenario. In this one, you are a brand new board member at a small but growing nonprofit, and you quickly realize that the board is like completely dysfunctional. I've heard this so many times. The founder is a visionary, but kind of a terrible manager. Now, the board is a mix of the founder's close friends who just rubber stamp his decisions and a few well-meaning but disengaged members who rarely speak up. You try to raise concerns about the lack of financial oversight and the high staff turnover, but you are immediately shut down by the founder and the board chair. So what do? What is your ethical obligation to the mission and the people that it serves? Would you stay and fight for change out of love for the mission, knowing it could be a long battle that you might not win? Or do you resign rather than lend your name and reputation to a poorly governed organization? Now, this scenario is inspired by a powerful first-person case study by nonprofit veteran Alex Counts. So let's think about this. While it's tempting to walk away from a toxic board, some argue that there are opportunities to be a positive agent for change, such as recruiting other reform-minded board members or pushing for governance reform when there are opportunities to do so. However, they also acknowledge that if the dysfunction is so entrenched that you can't fulfill your fiduciary duties as a board member, the ethical option could be to resign. So in my opinion, boards should always be thinking through the following questions together. What is a board member's responsibility when they fundamentally disagree with the direction of the board or the performance of their executive leader? Is resigning from a board an effective way to protest a course of action? And if so, what are the consequences of doing so? How can a board actively build a culture of trust and respect and constructive debate? This is a really important question. And a quick reminder, if your board is struggling with dysfunction because no one knows what their job is, comment the word roles below and I will send you the link to download my free board and staff roles checklist. Okay. Let's tackle our fourth dilemma. It's one I've definitely had questions from you all about in the past. So here's the scenario. Let's say you're a small environmental nonprofit that's facing an unexpected $50,000 budget shortfall for the year because a major grant fell through at the last minute. You have a massive year-end fundraising appeal that's about to go out. So here's the dilemma. Do you tell your donors about the budget shortfall, hoping it will inspire them to give more? Or do you say nothing, fearing that the bad news will make the organization look unstable and scare donors away? How much transparency is too much? This dilemma is explored in a case study by Better Fundraising, but like I said, I hear this from you all regularly. My opinion here is that transparency builds trust. We've talked extensively in past videos about how trust is the foundation of all fundraising. Donors can't help you solve a problem that they don't know you have. I once heard a story about an organization in my community that went out of business because of budget shortfalls, and donors were mad because they said they would have helped if they'd only known there was a problem. So while there's always a chance that you might lose a few skittish donors in the short term, honesty is going to build a base of loyal supporters who are invested in your long-term success. So if you're wrestling with this or a similar issue, here are some questions you can think through. What are the short-term risks versus long-term consequences of hiding financial challenges? What is the board's role in ensuring that the organization's communications with donors are honest and transparent. And if we decide to be transparent about this problem, how do we frame the message in a way that is empowering and solution-oriented rather than desperate sounding or alarming? Before we think through our fifth and final dilemma, I want to take a moment to thank the sponsor of this video, Click and Pledge. Click and Pledge makes it so easy for nonprofits to start and grow their fundraising with confidence, to communicate transparently with your donors like we were just talking about, and to equip your team members and supporters with the tools that they need to help you raise money for your cause. So with Click and Pledge, you're going to get professional grade tools for super affordable startup level costs from day one. They've got customizable donation forms that you can plug into your website to kickstart your fundraising strategy. But Click and Pledge also has a number of other tools included in their affordable flat monthly costs that you can use as your nonprofit grows. Things like in-person donation collection at events, peer-to-peer fundraising features, video fundraising with links to donate embedded right in the videos, text-to-give tools, donor management tools, AI support like their Pulse feature that will help you create fundraising reports, and Ask Quickly, which helps your donors ask questions so they get the clarity that they need to donate. They've got Salesforce and other integrations all included with no contracts or surprise add-on fees. Now, unlike some platforms that increase your fees as you grow, Click and Pledge pricing stays the same whether you have 10 donors or 10,000 donors. So use the QR code and the link in the description below to check out Click and Pledge, book a demo, and get your first $25 monthly fee waived. Our fifth and final scenario gets at the heart of a question that comes up all the time in nonprofit fundraising. How are you allowed to spend money donated to your organization? Here's the scenario. A longtime beloved board member passes away and leaves $1 million in their will to your organization with explicit written instructions that they want their donation to be endowed, which basically means putting it in an endowment account where it can generate interest for the organization. However, another current board member who happens to be best friends with the deceased insists that the donor actually would have wanted to use half of that money for a massive challenge campaign to attract new donors. You don't have any written proof to support that the donor would have wanted this, but the board member is adamant and threatens to resign and take his own funding with him if his friend's wishes are not honored. What would you do? How does the board balance its legal and ethical obligation to honor the written donor intent with the desire to appease a powerful board member and potentially leverage the gift for greater immediate impact? Now, this scenario comes from a real-life case study by the Association of Fundraising Professionals, or AFP, and this answer is a little bit more clear-cut. Experts here say that the written donor intent is key. The board has a strict fiduciary and legal duty to honor the donor's wishes exactly as it is expressed in the intent letter, not as interpreted by a friend or family member or a powerful board member. So here are some questions you can think through on this one. First, what are the strict legal requirements for honoring donor intent, and where do ethical considerations overlap? Second, how should the board handle this kind of situation where one board member is using their personal influence or wealth to push a personal agenda? And next is, what policies must be in place to handle bequests and restricted gifts like this so that this confusion never happens again? Leading a nonprofit and being on a nonprofit board are massive responsibilities. You aren't just there to cheerlead, you're there to protect the mission, even when the choices are incredibly difficult. So if your board has never discussed scenarios like these, I recommend you try taking one of these dilemmas to your next board meeting. Spend 15 minutes debating it. It is one of the best ways to build the ethical muscle memory your board needs before a real crisis hits. Sometimes dilemmas and conflicts emerge because the board and staff aren't clear on their roles and responsibilities. So once again, if you want to make sure your organization has clarity on these roles, comment the word roles below, and I'll send you the link to download my free board versus staff roles checklist to help you validate exactly who should be doing what. And if you want to keep learning how to build a sustainable, impactful organization, make sure you're subscribed to my free weekly newsletter linked below and at my website, changemakercafe.com. Now, if you are starting or growing a nonprofit and thinking about what other skills your board of directors will need to lead the organization effectively, check out this video next. I'm Amber Melanie Smith. Don't forget to subscribe to catch the next video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.